a linebacker scoring a touchdown, most points scored in a quarter in the Super Bowl, the longest touchdown reception in Super Bowl history. Super Bowl 38 had a little bit of everything, yet it doesn't get talked about enough. So let's take a look. First, let's set the stage. The Panthers went 11-5 and were a wildcard team. Coming off a 1-15 season 2 years prior, this was quite a turnaround. The highlight of their playoff run would be a double overtime victory against the Rams, with this beauty.
Delhomme fires to an open Smith. Steve Smith is going to go all the way. No flags down. Smith scores, and the Carolina Panthers win in overtime.
Originally an undrafted quarterback stuck on the Saints practice squad, and a couple years in NFL Europe, Jake Delhomme was the second undrafted quarterback ever to start a Super Bowl. Funnily enough, the first was Kurt Warner, and both had played in NFL Europe. Also, fellow NFL Europe colleague Brad Johnson won the Super Bowl the year prior. The early years of NFL Europe seemed to be a breeding ground for Super Bowl talent. Okay, maybe that's taking it too far. Dubbed the Cardiac Cats due to the fact their games were often decided in the final minutes or the final play of the game, and this Super Bowl would be no different. After missing the playoffs in 2002, and starting the 2003 season 2-2, many were writing off the Patriots. While the doubt was premature, ranked the #1 defense and first in fewest passing touchdowns allowed and most interceptions, they went 12-0 after that rocky start. Then in the playoffs, they beat both MVPs. Yeah, that year there were 2 MVPs, Steve McNair with the Titans, followed by Manning and the Colts. Following the AFC title game, the Colts actually complained to the league because the Patriots were playing too physical. The Mel Blount rule, which prevents contact by defenders against receivers more than 5 yards downfield, had been in effect since 1978, but following the complaints, the league began enforcing the rule more strictly, and the complaint was heard, as the following season, penalties for illegal contact were called almost 2.5 times more. But to the main event, there was no points scored in the first or third quarter, the first Super Bowl with 2 scoreless quarters. The closest we got to points in the first was a missed 31-yard field goal by Adam Vinatieri. Otherwise, it was just punts and 3 and outs. But it turned into an offensive shootout in the second and fourth. This was a Jekyll and Hyde type of game. A strip sack by Vrabel put the Patriots offense at the Panthers' 20-yard line, and they'd get the first points of the game. Up to this point, the Panthers had an impressive -8 yards on offense. It's not like the Patriots were cooking though, obviously, it was only 7-0. Yet with only 3 minutes left, we'd see 2 more touchdowns and a field goal before the first half ended. The Patriots entered the locker room with a 14-10 lead. The Super Bowl halftime show ended in a controversial and infamous moment. It would become the most rewatched moment in TiVo history. Maybe recovering from that crazy performance, the third quarter would be radio silent. Then in the fourth, the shootout would continue. The 37 total points scored in the fourth are the most ever in a single quarter of a Super Bowl. So a few key plays from the fourth. The Panthers made a questionable call to go for 2 with the score 21-16, and they wouldn't convert. Then, after a Brady red zone interception, with 7 minutes left in the game, Jake Delhomme temporarily stole Brady's clutch gene and connected with Musi Muhammad for an 85-yard touchdown pass. It would go down as the longest touchdown pass in Super Bowl history, a record that still stands 20 years later. After missing the previous 2-point conversion, they had to try again, and well, they'd fail again. It was 22-21. It could have been 24-21 if they kicked the extra points. Don't go for 2, kids. Or maybe do, as after a 1-yard Vrabel touchdown, the Patriots went for 2 and converted, making it 29-22. It's easy to say don't go for it in retrospect. If they made it, it would be a different story. So let's just say that's the way the chips fell. And side note, Vrabel was excellent in this game. MVP worthy, maybe? 2 sacks, a forced fumble that led to a touchdown, and an offensive touchdown. With a minute 42, after a 30-yard completion, the Panthers called a timeout at the Patriots 14, and that seemed unnecessary. They could have drained the clock more, but instead gave more time for Brady than necessary. They would score though, tying it 29-29. Then John Casey's kickoff went out of bounds, putting the Patriots at their 40. The Patriots would lose 10 yards a couple plays later on an offensive pass interference, but it wouldn't be enough for the Panthers. Vinatieri, despite missing 2 field goals that game, would convert, giving the Patriots their second Super Bowl in 3 years. It's funny too, because much of the discussion after that game was about how this was the closest thing we'd get to a dynasty in the salary cap and free agency era. That was a bad take, but it certainly was not a bad Super Bowl.